But we also really need to do a really good assessment of the performance of everything we've been up to the past couple months. So the way that we do this, and I hope that you're tracking your marketing metrics, because that's going to make this process much more useful. But if you have not, I would suggest really looking at some of your core leading and lagging indicating metrics. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. I'm Victoria Hadra, your host, and I'm so excited that you're here today because we are talking about something that's very important, very timely, and that is our mid-year review. So, if doing a mid-year review is not in your practice as a founder, I highly suggest taking some time with your team to reconnect, check back in with the goals that you set for yourself back in January. Now, I've spoken a lot about how much I love the summer as a time to kind of reconnect with your business and how I actually love business planning much, much more in the summer and actually prefer it over January planning. I just feel like there's a lot more spaciousness. There's a lot, many of us are very busy in the summer, but for me, I feel like it's a time that I can really, we're oftentimes there's vacation, there's like time traveling on planes and just some time to kind of like learn and reflect and journal and all of that stuff. What I want to get into today, and actually we're going to continue this conversation next week as well, because it's going to be a two-part series on how to really do a mid-year review and planning for the next 6 months ahead. I'm going to get really granular on the things that I do within my own team and the teams that I manage for our clients, and really work through our process. And feel free to kind of steal our process and make it your own. But I think, oftentimes we say, yeah, even quarterly planning can feel a little bit vague. So I'm going to go over exactly, what I love to do to make it super duper actionable. Okay. And before we get into it, I think, there needs to be first some time that you give yourself in order to prepare for this process. And I know that in the day-to-day to business of our business, it's sometimes hard to take that time. But that old adage of, and I believe it was, Zig Ziglar or Jim Collins or one of these thought leaders that said, every, minute that you spend planning and preparing and being strategic actually saves you like, hours in execution. I'm probably not paraphrasing that correctly, but the point is that doing the work up front actually not only saves you time in the future, but it actually helps you be much more efficient. And it's something that I feel like we don't do because we feel guilty taking, a moment away from the day to day, or that there's just so much to do day to day. But if we have a longer kind of view of everything that we're doing and everything that's going on in our business, then we can really understand how important it is. So, before we go through this idea of like what are the elements of this mid-year review and planning session, you first have to take it seriously, and you have to really put in the time in order to get this done properly, because this could really be the make or break moment in your business. And more personally, when I go through this, and I'm kind of up against this now, it's kind of things that I'm thinking about now, is that as I look towards the next 6 months of my life and in my business, and my deep desire to kind of hit those targets that I set for myself, it's really a moment where I'm thinking, what support do I need? Not just from team, but maybe from coaches, from mentors. What learning do I, have to commit to over the summer? I love to give myself little projects over the summer that are not that are more like enrichment projects, more like growth development projects, and identifying where the like pieces of my knowledge level that I want to upgrade and enhance, and really understand what those are, or where you may need coaching or getting consulted or getting some outside opinions on. Because sometimes to get to that next level of growth, what got you here is not going to get you there. And that may mean investing in someone to kind of have an outside perspective, kind of get you on the path quickly, um, and really just kind of supercharge everything, right? Um, and so if you're feeling like, yes, I want to go faster, those are some options that I'm considering. And I'm not considering it just because I'm a consultant and I'm saying you should have a consultant. I'm saying it because this is actually what I do as well for myself. Like I practice what I preach, and I know that the mentors, the masterminds I've gotten into, putting myself in the room has absolutely uh, gotten me to the next level. Like there's been moments where I've invested in these things for myself and seen my revenue double, no joke. Like seen my productivity double, seen my confidence double, the network that I have. So when you invest in yourself, the dominoes fall like into place. And I have found personally that it is worth a lot. So that's my soapbox I'll get off of now, because sometimes, you are working as hard as you can. And as a founder, even me as a marketing leader, like I run up against things that I still need to learn, right? And I'm a consultant. I see a lot of businesses. I make a lot of, I've learned so much from all of the businesses, all the founders that I've worked in. But I know that there's still so much for me to learn. And because especially marketing is so dynamic and always changing, to be in that position, be humbled by the knowledge of like, you're never going to stop, learning. You're never going to know everything, is something that you need to get honest with yourself at. Because again, bringing it back to this idea of quarterly review and planning, it's like, if you want to get to somewhere you've never been before, now is the moment, 6 months out, where it is important to ask yourself, like, do I have the tools I need to be successful? And oftentimes it's during these types of practices where we look at the black and white of it, like we're staring into the reality where it's like, hey, it's going to take a freaking miracle to get to these KPIs that we set in January. But knowing that now, when we have some time to do something about it, right, to change course, to implement different tactic, or get some outside advice, now we have the time to do it, right? We can still make it. So this is such a critical time of the year. And again, and we talked about this a couple episodes back, if you want to go back to it, is how to prepare your business for summer vacation. And this is a moment where a lot of people take their foot off the gas. And if they aren't where they want to be in their business, it's like, it's kind of, they kind of like give up. It's like you're on that diet and then you kind of like messed up one day. So it's kind of like, let's just, you mess up one meal and then you're just kind of like, F it for the rest of the day or the rest of the weekend. I'll start again on Monday, right? I don't want that to be you. I certainly don't want it to be me for my business, where I kind of say, screw it. Everyone's on vacation for the next 2 months and then have to kind of start back on Monday, which is back in September, and feel like I'm starting over, right? I don't want that for any of us. So that's why doing this now, like before we get really into the swing of things in the summer, or we're really busy, I think this is just a beautiful time. So what is the first step? We're going to go through a couple steps. I've got 5 steps, and we're going to do this as a 2-parter. We're going to walk through the first one. I think the first 3 today, I think, is good. So the first, and foremost, again, we're setting aside time, but we really need to assess the goals that we set for ourselves, check back in with them on, obviously. But we also really need to do a really good assessment of the performance of everything we've been up to the past couple months. So the way that we do this, and I hope that you're tracking your marketing metrics, because that's going to make this process much more useful. But if you have not, I would suggest really looking at some of your core leading and lagging indicating metrics, and go back from January. So take the time to historically look back and look month over month at what was your performance in each of these key areas. So let's back it up. Leading and lagging metrics. So if you haven't heard this term, right, our leading and lagging metrics, they're two types of data that we are kind of looking at and assessing in our business. Now, a lagging metric is an example of something that is a result. So number of sales, revenue, I would even say, and it depends. For me personally, I'm looking at all of these like as the results that I want to achieve. So this is really like sales, revenue, and email list growth. I look at. Some people consider email list growth the leading indicator, but I'm going to tell you why I don't, because the leading indicators for me is like how granular can I get in understanding the exact actions I need to take that's going to give me these lagging metrics. So stick with me here. Lagging metrics are the results that you want, and you want to be tracking how are the results week over week and month over month. Okay. So that's how many actual sales that were made, how much revenue came into the business. And I like to look at how did my email list grow, right? Because these are really the metrics I'm focused on because I know that that's just like a success metric for me overall. Lagging metrics are the results. Lagging, it's like once we kind of look at this number, there's not really much, that number in itself is not super actionable. The really actionable metrics are the leading metrics, these are leading indicators. So if I'm looking at email list growth, right? I want to see my email list always growing. But in order for that email list to grow, I know that I need to be running ads to my lead magnets, right? Or be posting organically on social, enticing people to check out my lead magnets, or I need to be mentioning them on the podcast, or I need to be sharing them inside the communities that I am part of. Like these are all the actions that you or your team can actually do that's going to affect that number. And when we're looking at the data, it's often like this retroactive like situation where we're kind of looking at the past and we're kind of just saying, this is what we got, right? But when we're really focused on those leading metrics, we can actually translate that into action steps. So, for example, if we are looking at our lagging metric of how many email addresses did I get this month, we can break that down to say, hey, every time I share uh, my lead magnet organically on social media, I can get maybe one or two people to actually check it out, for example, right? So, what is one action that you or your team can do? Well, that would be maybe increasing the frequency by which you're sharing the lead magnet over social. Or you could think, well, if I'm only getting one or two people to convert and give me their email address when I'm sharing this lead magnet organically, maybe I could get a little bit more creative. Maybe I could be doing polls or using automation tools like ManyChat or XYZ LMNOP. When we're looking at the lagging metric and then kind of pointing to the leading metrics, like what is the action steps I could be taking, um, that's going to help us solve problems, which is ultimately what we need to be doing as marketers, as business owners, right? Um, so when we are actively looking at the metrics, it gives us this opportunity to unlock the ideas, the creativity, the things that are actually going to get the results that we ultimately want for our business. The problem is that a lot of times we're just simply not looking at the metrics, or we have the metrics, like our team fills out a scorecard for us, or our ads manager gives us that data, or our social manager gives us that data, and we just kind of glaze right over it. And we're like, "No, this worked. People like this, whatever." When we're doing a quarterly review or we're doing a mid-year review and planning, especially, we want to look at the data, like the data set over the 6 months, to be looking at it on a macro level, to be making some bigger conclusions and insights of what's going on. And in doing this, we can really look at like, hey, Are we getting the results that we want from our social media? Are we getting the results we want from our email, our campaigns, our promotions? And really get honest with what's working and what's not working. And this could be the core moment where you realize what is the help that you need, right? So like the to supplement your knowledge or whatever, like what is like a consultant or a coach or whatever, it's going through this process to seeing where are the weak parts of my marketing program. And then you can start understanding what are the specific things that you can work on and you can improve, right? So if you feel like there's so much more opportunity you could be grabbing through social media, that's going to probably help direct you to resources like, for example, Gary V has a new book that's going to be one of my summer reads, which is Day Trading Attention. I'm really excited to read it. Of course, I'm like reading marketing books on the beach, not romance novels, whatever. But that's an area that I'm really interested in understanding how social media algorithms have changed over the past year and what his opinions are the future of it and all that stuff. That's an area of focus for me. And so instead of feeling like a chicken without a head, I've indicated of, okay, well, one of my major goals is growth on LinkedIn, which is why when I'm recording my podcast, which you're listening to right now, I stream first on LinkedIn because I wanted to grow on LinkedIn. I wanted to utilize all of the tools on LinkedIn, right? Because I'm wholly focused on this. But I've reached mid-year and I'm saying, I wish that my follower growth was happening a little bit faster. And so that pain point of realizing where you want to be and where you are and realizing that they don't match up, that pain is actually what we use as motivation to kind of go deeper, work harder, learn more, right? In that particular area that you want to improve in. So, really connecting those goals, making sure that you're still attached to those goals, and then assessing like, are the things that you've been doing, are they really getting you closer to them? Because when we look at those numbers and like really plainly, it's painful, which is some of the reason why we don't look at the numbers, right? Because it sucks when we're not getting the results that we want. But it is through that pain that we find the answer and the solution. And we know what right questions to ask, right? We know what problems we're trying to solve. And so we go on the journey to try to solve them. So this is like the number one most important thing. Now, we should be doing this every quarter. This is what I do every quarter in our quarterly review and planning. But this is especially important when it comes to mid year because, again, it is a turning point. It can be a turning point, right? If you really get honest and you really invest in either the time or the money or whatever, of really getting the help or the knowledge that you need in order to reach those performance metrics that you want, hit those numbers and actually achieve those goals in the end. So that kind of brings us to the second stage, which is, the first is assessing that performance and matching it against your goals. And number two is identifying those opportunities and challenges, right? So for me, I'll go back to my LinkedIn goal, right? My LinkedIn is to grow on LinkedIn my reach and my follower count or whatever. And I've got a long road ahead of me, and I hope 1 year from now I can tell I'll be on the other side telling you like exactly how I got to my 10,000 followers, which is what I'm like very focused on, right? Um, for so many reasons, and there's a big why behind it. However, it's through really looking at like, okay, I say to myself, Tori, you've focused a lot of attention on LinkedIn. You're doing, tons of engagement and you're kind of showing up every day and you're posting or whatever. But like, wow, you haven't really gotten exactly the growth that you wanted. And so what that has had me do is get really curious and then figure out, who are the people that have gone before me that have gotten to where I am and really study, what they've done and kind of get their mentorship. Um, I've hired consultants to specifically help like upgrade profile and sort of talk about exactly the type of content to be sharing. So it's through the pain of realizing, okay, just kind of like doing what I think is good enough or doing what I think is going to get the results, and then seeing that it doesn't quite get there, sitting in that uncomfortable feeling is what has prompted me to really invest in finding the solution. And I know that I will get there and I will find what works for me and for my business. But it's like you got to sit in that pain in order to get you into action in the right direction. Because what a lot of us do is just kind of, we're always in this like low level sort of pain situation. We feel like everything's not working and we're kind of scattered a little bit. But I think one of the biggest points here about reaching the goals is the focus and the attention and the tenacity by which you like bring the energy that you bring to actually solving the problem. It takes like an immense amount of that focus and concentration to actually like solve these problems, because if it was so easy, everyone would do it. Like, period, right? It takes focus, it takes time, energy, effort. So step 2 is identifying those opportunities and those challenges and really getting help when needed, right? And then number 3 is where we'll kind of like close this, because I think it's a really good sort of point to end with, which is, you know, really getting like, once you've kind of identified all these things for yourself, right? You've kind of assessed performance and goals, and you've kind of identified the opportunities and challenges. Taking the time to do that, right? Because the beginning of this episode, I said we need to take the time to get strategic and give ourselves that time and that brain space. Well, number 3 is really bringing this to our teams. And the reason why I want you to do step 1 and 2 first is because I want you to come into that meeting with your team. And when I say team, oh boy, I mean the one person that you work with or the 10 people that you work with. It doesn't matter what size your business is. I want you to bring the team together, because together we can go further. Together we can really problem solve, right? And I want you to have that performance assessment, the goals, the opportunities, the challenges in the back of your head. But then I want you to hold a meeting really with your team to look at the metrics, to look at those opportunities and challenges together and get their ideas first, right? Don't tell them what the opportunities and challenges are. I want them to get involved in the process. Because the one thing that I can tell you, um, getting to 6 figures, for example, you can do a heck of a lot of it on your own, right? Muscling your way through, micromanaging, controlling, executing things on yourself by yourself. But when you're in this moment where you're getting to that elusive 7 figure mark, right? You want to reach that $1 million revenue in your business, you better believe that you are not going to get there alone. And so it is not enough to just bring your team together for a quarterly planning session and dictate to everyone what needs to happen. You need to start building a relationship with your team where they are eager and excited to grow the business for you, right? Because we grow our people and then our people grow the business, right? That's how we really get to the next level. And so I want you to be interested and curious about what they're seeing on the ground, what they're seeing in whatever particular thing that they're doing. It's also really cool. A lot of us feel a little bit hesitant to bring like our consultants or independent contractors or our freelancers in for these like quarterly planning meetings. A lot of us just don't do it. We just talk in silos to all these different people that contribute to our marketing effort. And we don't bring them together as a team because they're not like full-time employees. But the real benefit about having those folks on your team that are not full-time employees and treating them like a team is that, like, hey, these folks are usually inside a lot of different people's businesses. And so they have a lot of interesting insights to share, right? If you're working with like a social media manager that has a couple clients with different budgets and they're doing different activities, we can kind of use them as real information sources to kind of see what's going on in the market, see what's going on around. So being open to their ideas and respecting that they have like creative ideas that could be really good. And like doing that quarterly planning, or mid-year review and planning session together, and really getting everyone on board as a team to course correct and get everything moving in the right direction, right? Have people coming up with goals for themselves for the individual things that they're working on. Um, People want to be challenged. They want to grow themselves, right? And support them in maybe learning something new, or getting some support in for their particular thing. Because again, just because a performance in a particular area isn't hitting the mark doesn't mean that the person you have in your team, you should fire them and get someone new. If you have someone that's loyal and really growth minded, you can, of course, like, you can buy courses for that person or help get them a mentor, right? And help them level up their game. And that might breed even more loyalty to you and your business. So this is part one of your mid-year review and planning. I hope that you take the time to do this. I think it's a really, really important thing to do, and the best way that you can get everything on track for your business for the last 6 months of the year. I have kids home. It's summer vacation. I got to get to them, but I will be back here next week for the next Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. See you then.